Luxembourg is the seat of the Court of Justice of the European Union. The Court is the judicial authority of the European Union and works in cooperation with the courts and tribunals of the Member States to ensure that EU law is applied in the same way across the EU. It is one institution comprising 3 courts. The Court of Justice of the European Union consists of 3 courts. The Court of Justice has 28 judges, 1 from each member state, along with 8 advocates general. The General Court also has 28 judges. The Civil Service Tribunal, the newest of the 3 courts, has 7 judges. The Court of Justice was initially the Court of the European Coal and Steel Community, ECSC, the forerunner to the European Union. In the beginning, it had 6 member states and 4 official languages. Today, the EU has 28 member states with 24 official languages. Of the Court's 2,000 employees, half work in the translation department, situated in 2 24-storey towers, translating in all EU languages. As the Court of Justice of the European Union celebrates its 60th anniversary, it has a legacy of over 25,000 rulings, many of which have had an immediate impact on the everyday life of EU citizens. There are rulings on various issues in the field of free movement, competition and state aid, social equality, protection of the environment, consumer rights, and European trademarks. Since 2008, the court has been housed in a building designed by the French architect Dominique Perrault. Luxembourg, Kirchberg-Plateau. This is the site of the Court of Justice of the European Union. The court was established in 1952 by the Treaty of Paris, which laid the foundation for what today is the European Union. The first and foremost task of the European Court of Justice is to ensure that EU law is interpreted and applied in the same way in all EU member states. The current court building, opened in 2008, was designed by the architect Dominique Perrault and is a symphony of exciting designs in harmony. The Court of Justice of the European Union is one institution with 3 separate courts. These are the Court of Justice, the General Court, the Civil Service Tribunal. The judges of the Court of Justice elect one of their number as a president for a renewable period of 3 years. The court has 1 judge from each EU member state, appointed for a renewable term of 6 years. Today, there are 28. The judges are supported by 8 advocates general, who deliver impartial and independent legal opinions on the cases assigned to them. The Registrar is the court's Secretary-General and manages its departments. In the majority of the cases, the court sits in chambers of 3 to 5 judges. The court can also sit in a grand chamber with 15 judges for important cases. Only in exceptional cases does the court sit in a full court with all judges. The court gives preliminary rulings on questions coming from national judges. It settles disputes between the European Commission and Member States or disputes between EU institutions. The Court of Justice also hears appeals against rulings of the General Court. The General Court works alongside the Court of Justice. It currently has 28 judges appointed for a renewable term of office of 6 years. In most of the cases, the court sits in chambers of 3 judges, seldom in a bigger formation. The General Court delivers rulings in cases where individuals or companies want to annul a decision taken by an EU institution against them. It also rules in cases brought by Member States against the Commission, and in cases relating to intellectual property and trademarks. The newest court of the Court of Justice is the Civil Service Tribunal, which began its work in 2005. It has 7 judges who decide disputes between the EU and its staff. All official EU languages can be used in front of the Court of Justice, and rulings are published in these languages. This ensures that the court and its decisions are accessible to all EU citizens. Therefore, the Translation Department is the biggest department of the court. Of the 2,000 members of staff, almost 1,000 work for the Translation Department in the 2 24-story towers. All translators are trained lawyers in their home countries.
Los requisitos para poder trabajar en el Tribunal de Justicia como jurista lingüista son fundamentalmente 2. Uno es poseer un diploma de Derecho, ser un jurista titulado. En este caso, como yo trabajo para la Unidad de Traducción Española, soy licenciada en Derecho por una universidad española. El segundo requisito es conocer un mínimo de 2 lenguas oficiales de la Unión Europea, de las cuales una debe ser imperativamente el francés, que es la lengua de las deliberaciones del Tribunal.
Generaliniame vertimų direktorate dirba beveik 1000 žmonių. Teisininkai, lingvistai, asistentai, korektoriai. Ir Europos Sąjungoje esant 23 oficialiosioms kalboms, mūsų direktoratas dirba, užtikrina vertimus, yra 506 kalbinės kombinacijos. Ir metų pabaigoje suskaičiavome, kad praktiškai 1 milijoną puslapių mes kaip ir pagaminame.
All the court sessions are simultaneously interpreted as well. The European Court of Justice has, in its 60 years history, given over 25,000 rulings, and so ensures that the EU runs smoothly and that the EU rules are adhered to. The Court of Justice was established in 1952 by the Treaty of Paris as the Court of the European Coal and Steel Community, the ECSC, an initiative of the French Foreign Minister, Robert Schuman. The community was the forerunner to today's European Union. The court was founded to ensure that community law was observed and that all the 6 member states applied it in a uniform manner. The Court of Justice of the ECSC was established with 7 judges, one from each of the 6 founding member states: Belgium, Germany, France, Italy, Luxembourg and the Netherlands, plus 1 extra judge to ensure an uneven number of judges, thus preventing any vote being split equally. The judges were sworn in at the Luxembourg Town Hall, and the court's first home was the Villa Vauban. The administration and the language services were housed in 2 additional buildings. In 1957, as a result of the Treaty of Rome, where the European Economic Community, the EEC, was created, the court became the Court of Justice of the European Communities. A year later, the court, with all its departments, moved to one single building in the centre of Luxembourg. After the enlargement of the community, there was a need for more space to house the court's increasing staff. In 1973, the new court building, the Palais, was inaugurated in the Kirchberg Plateau in the city of Luxembourg. In the course of time, the workload of the court grew and a need for an additional judicial body was obvious. This body, the Court of First Instance, began its work in September 1989, following the Treaty of Lisbon. This court is now known as the General Court. Since 1952, the location of the Court of Justice in Luxembourg was on a provisional basis. That was changed by the European Council in Edinburgh in 1992, which decided that Luxembourg would be the permanent seat of the Court of Justice. In 2004, the European Council decided to establish the Civil Service Tribunal to deal with cases between the EU institutions and their employees. After several successive enlargements of the EU, the need for more space arose. In 2008, the enlarged court building with its 2 towers was opened. With the Treaty of Lisbon in 2009, the court's official name changed from the Court of Justice of the European Communities to the Court of Justice of the European Union. The Court of Justice has, during its history, delivered judgments in numerous cases to solve concrete problems faced by individuals and companies in the EU. In 1963, a transport company had imported goods from Germany to the Netherlands. It felt that the customs duties it had to pay breached the EEC treaty, which prohibited increases in customs duties between member states. The action raised the question of whether national courts could apply European law themselves. The answer was yes. People and companies could invoke European law before their national courts, who were competent to apply it. The following year, in a case concerning the nationalisation of the Italian electricity industry, the court ruled that when national and European laws conflict, the European laws take precedence. In its 60-year history, the Court of Justice has a legacy of over 25,000 rulings. The European Union has today 28 member states. The Court of Justice will contribute to dealing with the challenges the expanding European Union brings. We are in Luxembourg, at the site of the European Court of Justice. It is the highest court in Europe for EU law. Morning at the Court of Justice. The van arrives with the mail for the court. Among the items to go through a first security check is an envelope with documents for a new case. The postman takes the envelope to the registry. It is opened and stamped with the date of arrival. The case has arrived at the court. The registry staff is the first to deal with the case. They give the case a number and enter it in the register. Copies of the documents are then sent to the translation service. Cases can be brought in any one of the EU's 24 official languages. Meanwhile, lawyers arrive in court for hearings and rulings. The judges enter the courtroom. The judges of the Court of Justice dressed in their red robes. The judges of the General Court use blue robes, and the colour of the robes in the Civil Service Tribunal is green. The session begins with a ruling. The court rulings and hearings are conducted in the language of the parties in the case. The Court of Justice gives rulings in about 600 cases per year. The sessions are simultaneously interpreted. A hearing is conducted in the General Court. In the General Court, rulings are given in about 600 cases every year. The Civil Service Tribunal sits in about 160 cases annually. After the hearing, the judge deliberates on the case in French. Judgments are translated into the official EU languages. Half of the staff of the Court of Justice work in the translation department, in the two 24-storey towers, 107 metres high. All translators are trained lawyers in their home countries.
Man muss Jurist sein und daneben muss man gründliche Kenntnisse in Amtssprachen haben, wobei in unserer Abteilung der Schnitt bei 5 Fremdsprachen liegt, aus denen wir übersetzen. Und es gibt sogar Leute, die Sprachkenntnisse im zweistelligen Bereich haben.
Ik vertaal dus uit het Frans, Engels, Duits, Italiaans, Spaans, Portugees en sinds kort ook af en toe uit het Hongaars.
The archives store the 60-year legacy of the Court of Justice. Over 220,000 volumes on 10 kilometres of shelves are made available for the staff and visitors to the court. Here you can find legal literature in all EU official languages, and more. In the peaceful atmosphere, you can study cases and prepare for hearings or academic work. A busy day in the Court of Justice comes to its end. Rulings and hearings during the day have once again ensured that the EU runs smoothly and that EU rules are respected. This is the annual open day of the Court of Justice. Citizens are invited to visit the court. Questions will be answered. The building will be shown.
What is the difference between the court here in Luxembourg and the one in Strasbourg?
They are two completely different institutions. The Court of Justice of the European Union and the European Court of Human Rights. The European Court of Human Rights has been established by the Council of Europe, a much wider international organisation whose members include not only the EU member states but also many others such as Russia, Switzerland and Turkey, to ensure compliance with the European Convention on Human Rights. Many citizens have taken advantage of the court's open day. They are informed about the proceedings and the structure of the court. They admire the extraordinary architecture of the court building. or make themselves familiar with the history of the court. Original rulings from the beginning of the 60-year-long history of the court. Robes for the judges of the different courts are on display.
Darf ich meinen Fall vor den Europäischen Gerichtshof bringen?
Only if you are seeking annulment of a decision of an EU institution such as the European Commission or the European Parliament. The court has only a limited jurisdiction to hear individual complaints. A typical example is a case brought by a company against a European Commission decision imposing a fine on that company. As a general rule, citizens or companies must bring a case before their national courts, which then may, or in some cases must, refer a preliminary question to the Court of Justice. The court will then give a binding interpretation of EU law. During the open day, citizens not only have access to the courtrooms, but can also go behind the scenes and visit areas normally closed off to the general public. In a year, about 600 groups of citizens from all over Europe visit the court, a total of 15,000 visitors.
¿Cuándo recibimos respuesta de un caso llevado a juicio?
This depends on the type of procedure. Most cases take around a year and a half. However, in urgent cases related to the area of freedom, security and justice, the court can use a special procedure to deliver judgment in a couple of months. For instance, in cases regarding parental custody. Today, the public even has access to the Deliberation Room of the Court of Justice. Here, the judges deliberate the cases.
Hogyan választják meg a bírákat?
The judges and advocates general are appointed by common accord of the governments of the EU member states after consultation of an independent expert panel responsible for giving an opinion on prospective candidates' suitability to perform the duties concerned. They are appointed for a term of office of 6 years, which is renewable. They are chosen from among individuals whose independence is beyond doubt and who possess the qualifications required for appointment in their respective countries to the highest judicial offices or who are of recognised competence. Even the youngest ones are catered for, and the queue for the balloons is long. Information about all aspects of the court is available, and of course in all EU languages. A busy open day with 2,500 visitors draws to a close. The visitors leave with more knowledge about the Court of Justice, the court for all EU citizens. A court determines itself through the cases it handles and the judgments it delivers. The Court of Justice has already given judgments in over 25,000 cases. One of the biggest and most well-known case the Court of Justice has ruled on is the Bosman Case, which contributed to the changing face of European football. The Belgian footballer Jean-Marc Bosman had reached the end of his contract with a Belgian club and wanted to move to a French team. When the French team refused to pay the transfer fee demanded, the Belgian club blocked the transfer. Bosman took a case before the Belgian courts, which referred questions to the Court of Justice. In its judgment in 1995, the court ruled that professional sport is an economic activity and therefore covered by EU law. As a result, players at the end of their contract could transfer clubs free of charge, and rules limiting the number of foreign players in a team could no longer apply to EU citizens. Recently, a ruling delivered by the court relating to live broadcasting of football matches had an impact for all Europeans. In the case involving a dispute over the use of foreign satellite decoders to watch Premier League football matches, the court declared that individuals could not be prevented from using foreign decoders in their own homes. The Court of Justice has ruled in a number of cases concerning air passengers' rights. The rulings have strengthened the consumer's position in relation to air carriers. An EU regulation states that when a flight is delayed or cancelled, the airlines must provide passengers with meals, refreshments and hotel accommodation. In some cases, passengers are also entitled to financial compensation. In cases clarifying the rules in this regard, the court has stated that airlines cannot, as a general rule, escape liability for this compensation by citing technical problems with the aircraft. The court has also ruled in a separate case that passengers whose flights are delayed for more than 3 hours are also entitled to compensation in the same way as passengers whose flights are cancelled. In a case referred by a German court, brought by a consumer association against an online travel agent, the court decided that when selling flight tickets, airlines and travel agents are not allowed to automatically include insurance in the price of the ticket. Rather, it must be offered as an optional extra, that the traveller must explicitly choose to buy by opting in. Offering the traveller the possibility to opt out of the insurance was not acceptable. In a series of cases, the Court of Justice ruled that EU citizens were entitled to go to other EU countries in order to receive healthcare and be reimbursed the costs by their healthcare insurance scheme at home. The cases arose from a variety of scenarios, including purchasing spectacles in another country, receiving dental treatment and some hospital treatments. In one case, a British pensioner needed a hip replacement but was faced with a lengthy waiting time. Rather than wait for her operation to be carried out in a British hospital, she chose instead to go to France. Then she sought reimbursement in the UK of the costs for the operation. The Court of Justice ruled that a health insurance scheme cannot refuse reimbursement of treatment carried out abroad if the waiting time for the operation at home is too long given the patient's medical condition. The Court's decisions in this field led to the European Parliament and European Council to adopt a directive bringing together all these rulings in a single codified piece of legislation. To help ensure that Member States abide by EU law, the Court has the power, when asked by the European Commission, to impose fines on countries. Even if this happens rarely, the Court has imposed fines of millions of euros on Member States for breaches of EU law, mainly in the field of environmental protection. The Court also ensures that the EU institutions themselves abide by EU law. This is mainly the task of the General Court. For instance, in 2007, in a case brought by Microsoft, the General Court found that the European Commission had correctly fined the software giant €497 million for abusing its dominant position. For over 60 years, the Court of Justice has acted as the final arbiter in disputes about European law, its independent judges handing down decisions to ensure that the member states of the EU and its institutions abide by EU law. Working in collaboration with national courts, the Court of Justice has also ensured that EU rules are applied in the same way across the EU, that EU citizens can assert their rights before their own courts, and that the EU runs smoothly. However, the work of the court is not done. Its workload has tripled in the last 20 years, an increase that shows no signs of stopping in the near future, with the three courts combined now producing in excess of 1,500 decisions per year. Through its judgments of fundamental importance to the work of businesses and the lives of citizens across Europe, the Court strives to ensure the smooth functioning of the EU, maintaining the trust and respect of member states, institutions and citizens alike.